Hello, everybody. I'm Ty Tabing. I'm the Executive Director of the Chicago Loop Alliance. Just to follow up on what Ed had said, I was fortunate enough to go to that opening party. Is what I kept screaming all night into the wee hours of the night is there is no comp for this party. Because there really wasn't. I mean, it was this really tremendous civic experience. But you know, I used to work in the planning department, and the reality is that Millennium Park is really kind of the gravy that was part of the city's redevelopment plan for the entire East Loop area. The reality of the East Loop about 10, 15 years ago was that it was no longer a desirable office location, or less desirable than some of the other locations in the city. More of the Class A office tenants were desiring to be in the West Loop along Wacker Drive, and so the city was really faced with a situation in which all of these architecturally significant buildings that had some obsolete floor plates and a lot of real challenges were, for the most part, questionable as to what their future use would be. So the city created a redevelopment plan, and the redevelopment plan actually did not call for Millennium Park. Millennium Park has been a key element to this whole thing, but to a certain extent, you really have to understand the context of the city's plan before you can, excuse me, understand exactly how this came about. The city's plan was to convert these old Class C office buildings into alternative uses, be they hotels or college-oriented facilities, whatever it happened to be. There are some pretty shining examples of that. The Reliance building at Washington and State, which became the Hotel Burnham, or also the Hard Rock Hotel on Michigan Avenue being a couple of the more prominent examples of that. But also the city wanted to create an environment that didn't fold up at the conclusion of the workday. So as a result of that, the theater district that is centered along Randolph Street became very important in terms of TIF subsidies that were provided to convert a lot of those important venues into modern use, in some situations expand the depth of the stage. But also, there were two other elements. There was the theater district on the north, and then the refurbishing of State Street, the demauling of State Street that took place in 1996, and what we'll be seeing next year, the reconstruction of Wabash Avenue, which is about a $25 million project that we hope will really transform the perception of Wabash. But in addition to that, on the south end, the city wanted to capitalize on the excitement of the Harold Washington Library, which had opened. And so the goal was to create a cultural and educational anchor in the South Loop area. So all of these things have incrementally begun to come online. And one of the key elements to this is the TIF that exists in the area. It started out as the North Loop TIF. It was enlarged to become the Central Loop TIF. I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but I believe the TIF has generated in excess of $600 million since it was created. And some of the money has gone to private developers. Also, of course, there have been large infrastructure projects that have been funded. But that was item number two in terms of what has allowed this area to change. One was the redevelopment plan. Two was the money, which is substantial. And three was really the changing demographics that we were fortunate enough to capitalize on with baby boomers aging. Some of the baby boomers were further along in their careers and desired to be closer to their place of employment so they could eliminate their commutes. And one of the more interesting developments that we've seen is a lot of retirees are looking at downtown areas as a place where you can actually be independent. You can catch a cab or public transportation. You don't need to be reliant on other people to get around. So we've been really intrigued to learn that retirees as well as young professionals are beginning to not only move into downtown Chicago, but other metropolitan areas as well. So that's kind of the context in which all of this occurred. The reality is that the Chicago Loop Alliance would not have emerged were it not for Millennium Park. Millennium Park has really created the sense of neighborhood that has been lacking in the Loop area, in particular the East Loop area, for some time. And as a result of the sense of neighborhood and the aggressive programming that comes through the Grant Park Music Festival and all the other things that the park does, there's an article in the Trib a few months ago, I think, in which they talked about it was an appeal to people of all ages as well as different ethnicities throughout the city. So it's really become a magnet, a gathering point. And I'm going to actually slide down here and show you some of the different sectors that have really emerged within the East Loop area that I think can directly be tied to Millennium Park. So I'm going to try and pull a little Oprah Winfrey here and slide down here.